Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the fourth seminar of our seminar series. Today's title is Nexus Approach for a Sustainable Use and Management of Water Resources. Firstly, I should introduce myself. I am Anjali Bamzai. I am Embassy Science Fellow at Post Cairo, Egypt for 2 months. And I am enjoying the hospitality of Climate Change Information Center, Dr. Ala Khalil and his colleagues. Today we have two speakers, Dr. Erica Key and Dr. Faten Bahar. It's actually a tag team presentation. Both of them will be presenting. And there are two parts. Part one is today, and part two of their talk is next week, August 17th. These sessions will explore the challenging context and reflect on the untapped opportunities related to the sustainable use of water resources and management based on water, energy, food nexus approach. So they will describe the approach. About Dr. Erica Key, who actually was my colleague at National Science Foundation some years back. She is the US Global Hub Director for Future Earth. Future Earth is an international constellation of researchers, innovators, and actors supporting transformations to sustainability. And she brings to the role more than a decade of experience leading systems approaches to global change. Prior to joining Future Earth, Erica was the executive director of the Belmont Forum. I think 2 Wednesdays back, you heard from Dr. Maria Yule about Belmont Forum. So Erica was also engaged with the Belmont Forum. And as I mentioned, she was a program director at NSF in the Arctic Sciences section. And so we both were colleagues at that point. Erica holds a PhD in meteorology and physical oceanography from the University of Miami, Rosenstiel School of Marine Sciences. The second speaker is Dr. Faten Bahar. She was a postdoc at the University of El Manar National Engineering School of Tunisia. And she was also previously at the University of Carthage, Tunisia Polytechnic School. And she works on renewable energy technologies, markets and implementation, systems, energy systems modeling, green transition with a focus on Africa, climate action and climate protection. Faten was also an Alexander von Humboldt Fellow for the International Climate Protection Program, hosted at the University of Rostock, Germany, a couple of years back. I requested Faten to make her remarks in Arabic, and she has kindly agreed. So the format for today, Dr. Ala Khalil will welcome you all and make a few remarks. Then Mr. Chuck Fee from the US Embassy in Cairo will make some remarks and then turn it over to the speakers. In the end, Dr. Ala Nasser will ably monitor and moderate the Q&A. So over to Dr. Ala Khalil, who is the head of the drought early warning systems here at the CCIC.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dr. Anjali, and welcome, Dr. Erica and Faten. Welcome to all of you. I am Ala Khalil, Supervisor of Early Warning Unit in Climate Change Information Center. And on behalf of Dr. Muhammad Fahim, Chief of Climate Change Information Center, I'd like to thank you, MC, for weekly presentation and seminar, and for support us. And I hope all of you during this presentation increase his knowledge and information about the Nexus approach for sustainable use and management of water resources, and how it links it with climate change. And thanks again for all, and I hope all enjoy with Erica and Faten the presentation. Thank you.
Over to you, Chuck.
Thank you, Dr. Allah, and
Dr. Angeli and Dr. Allah, the other Dr. Allah. Hi, everyone. This is Chuck Fee from the U.S. Embassy. I'm lucky to have met some of you when I visited to the CCIC, and I hope I'll meet the rest of you soon. Just like to thank you for dialing in today for today's talk about water. Obviously, it's a huge concern for the whole world, and especially in Egypt, where the water resources are limited. Very excited to have Dr. Erica and Dr. Faten here, especially as we talk about these issues that are so important and will be a big topic as we get ready for COP27 in November in Sharm el-Sheikh. And it seems like we're going to have a very interesting conversation, both in English and in Arabic, and that I hope we all learn something and that we find it useful. So thanks, everyone, and hope to see or meet you all soon.
Thank you so much, Chuck. Over to you, Faten.
Hi, Anjali. Hi, everyone. So thank you very much for the introduction. السلام عليكم. يسرني لقاءكم اليوم في إطار هذه السلسلة من الندوات حول agriculture modern to support climate adaptation and resilience planning. Let me share my screen first. So then, where is my presentation? It's here. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, okay, so thank you very much, Anjali and Ala, for the nice presentation. As I was just mentioned that I'm glad to start my presentation on the first part of the Nexus Approach for sustainable use for management and water resources. Just one clarification for today's, only the presentation part, I'll be speaking English, but for the introduction, for the discussion part, I'll be very happy to deal with this in Arabic language. And also for next week, I will be given my entire presentation Arabic, just for clarification. So سأبدأ بتقديم الفقرة الأولى للمداخلة المتعلقة بلمحة سريعة حول تحديات وفرص استغلال المياه في شمال أفريقيا، وستنقل دكتور إريكا كي بعض الأمثلة من منطقة الشرق الأوسط وشمال أفريقيا. So I start with the first slide, and here I'm giving a highlight on what we should do about North Africa, and here about the total land. So it's occupying 4,007,062 around square meter. For the population, it's big population of 255,425,000, equivalent to 3.16 of total population of the world. And we know that the agriculture sector is very important for securing food there. And for the North Africa, the agriculture sector is contributing at least to 10% of the national GDP. And while talking about the water resources, North Africa is one of the most scarce regions. So we have like around 1% of our total renewable freshwater resources there. Here, I'm presenting the main economic activities in North Africa. So here, this is a graphic that I got from the African Development Bank report 2021, which presents the sector shares of nominal GDP in North Africa by countries between the period of 2016 and 2020. As we can see, like the average is around 11 to 12%, but this average is varying from countries. So here, for example, we have the highest for Mauritania, 23%, and then, for example, for Egypt and Morocco, Morocco and Tunisia, it's always almost between 11 and 13. And for other countries, the contribution of the agriculture to the GDP is not very high. And here we are talking about Libya, and maybe Libya is kind of very specific context because of the current situation there. Here, maybe it's very important to highlight water accessibility status in North Africa. And here also to clarify what does it mean when we talk about water scarcity. And here we are talking about the available water when it is not enough to meet the water demand, and this includes, water to drink, to maintain hygiene, and also for irrigation of the agriculture. And for the water, it's estimated that more than 70% of the region gross domestic product is generated in area with very high surface water stress. And this is very important to highlight. And also, there is the problem of climate change, the unequal distribution of water, the high urbanization rates, and the national development of activities is also leading to increase the water demand and also causing the highest stress in the region. And this might come up with some very bad results, including and affecting the food availability. And then we can see it in the food price, the food accessibility, and also mainly for the poor regions and rural communities and farms. Here I would like to highlight some of the drivers for the water scarcity, and those highlights were also highlighted in the UNICEF report appearing in 2021. And among those drivers, we can find agriculture and sustainable use, the unsustainable consumption, the poor governance, and also short-term intervention. In here, we are talking about the aggregation practices that are classified as unsustainable, because there are also some sustainable practices and there are also some unsustainable practices. And here, when the water consumption exceeds the local renewable water availability, in this condition, irrigation uses water should be allocated to environment flow, therefore contribute to environment degradation and growth and groundwater depletion. So also I would like that globally, agriculture accounts for an average of 70% of water use. And for the agriculture sector in the Middle East and North Africa, it's responsible for more than 80% of the overall water use. And I was just was mentioning that this sector is contributing to economic activity with the range of, the nominal one with the range of 10, 15. And so it is using more than 80% of the overall water use. The second fact is also the population growth. And usually the population growth is associated with an increase in food energy demands, and also, of course, water demands. And for example, in our region of North Africa and Middle East, the annual growth is having a rate of 1.56%. And according to a recent report from the African Development Bank, the population growth in the countries of Morocco, Tunisia, and Libya is between 3 to 9%. And by 2025, it is estimated that 1,800 million people are expected to live in countries with absolute water scarcity. The third fact is the infrastructure and the impact of the armed conflicts. And here, according to some statistics given by the Joint Monitoring Program of the WHO and the UNICEF, more than 41 million people will lack access to basic drinking waters. And also, if we see into the impacts of the armed conflicts that took place in Libya and that dramatically affected the drinking water services, according to the same resource, there is more than 438,000 needs for safe water. And one of the other facts, the fourth fact, this is the dependence on transboundary water. And this as it can be a challenge, it could be also an advantage, because having transboundary waters could also bring the benefits of collaborations, of trade, opportunities, etc. And most of the region, they are all sharing this kind of transboundary water. And currently, if you can see here on this map, it's sharing the transboundary basins area with operation arrangement of cooperation. And there is the main fact and one of the most important facts when we talk about the climate change risks. So the climate change will affect the water availability, the groundwater, surface water, will also impact the food productions, and also the agriculture. And here I'd like to give an example from the implication on water and agriculture sector in Tunisia because of the climate change. Here we are given examples from two basic scenarios, one the most optimistic scenarios, and one the business as usual scenario, the high emission scenarios. So for those scenarios, the projection of the climate risk are the following: decrease in the precipitation by 2050. And when you say decrease of precipitation, so we are saying decreasing of water resources. And here we can have a decrease between minus 4.1 to minus 6.7%. And this will lead also to a lot of droughts. And this will be affecting, the lands available for agriculture activities. And this will be touching the several sectors: agriculture, infrastructure, tourism, health, and governance. But here, let me go more to and explore more the agriculture sector. So they're going to be reduction of the crop yields, reduction of the revenue from exports, and also reduction of the food production. And while talking about the main risks, according to the different studies made on this, so there will be the decrease in the crop yields, the shift in growing seasons, and this is very important because for some of the agriculture activities, they might need kind of temperature, humidity, and then when we have this shift of seasons, so this will affect the production that we can estimate afterwards. And then we can have the degradation of the soil quality and productivity, the increase of salination. And here I would like to highlight some of the examples that we have here. For example, in Tunisia, we have the oasis sector, which is one of the key sector for the agricultural activities. And currently there are some studies saying that this sector is getting more and more affected by the salinity of the water there. So they started a couple of years ago with some programs in order to protect the oasis activity there, and also to look into how could we improve the quality of water base and what are solutions to mitigate all those climate risks that are touching the regions. And also, if we have bad activities, so then of course we'll be increasing the food prices, and this will cause also food shortage. And also this will affect the economic activities, and of course will be affecting the economic losses and at the national level, and also the household incomes. One of the questions that come to our mind while seeing all those challenges and all those issues that we are facing now and will be facing in the future is how could we mitigate this water scarcity and what kind of solution we can bring in there. And here, among others, because there might be other solutions, I would like to highlight three and focus on one, which is the title of our presentation. First, it's very important to have all the climate change modeling and vulnerability assessment, because while understanding what is happening and doing projection what we're going to be in the future, so then we can prepare some of the scenarios that could help in mitigating this kind of challenge. The second one, applying a Nexus approach to sustainable development. And of course, peace is very important for the world and for saving all resources in the world. And basically water in our region where there is big stress of this. So yeah, let me go to the point 2, which is the topic of our presentation today and next week, which is on applying a Nexus approach to sustainable development. And here when we're talking about Nexus approach, we are talking about a better approach to understand the complex and dynamic interrelationships, interlinkages between water, energy, and food, so we can use and manage our limited resources sustainably. And also because any action in one of them could affect the others. And here it forces us to think on impact for a decision in one sector and how to basically adapt it. So here in this graphic, here we can see some of the interactions between water, energy, and food. And the most important thing and the core thing is about optimizations, finding innovative solutions, and how to optimize all the resources together and make them work together in a sustainable way. So for example, if we see the double way of the water food, for example, when we talk, and also with consideration to the water resources, when we talk about the water food, so the question is, what are the water storage options for farmers, and how to consume the soil, consumption of the soil moistures and the fresh water for agriculture, and also the water used for food processing. And when we see the other way about food to water, so what technologies could make irrigation more sustainable in terms of water use, and also how could we reduce the droughts and the floods driven by climate change, what kind of solution we can get there. And for the water energy double ways, for the water to energy or water for energy, what are energy efficient water treatment technology? And here we can, like water can help support the use of energy in hydropower, etc. And when we talk about the energy to water, how does water shared management help hydropower, development of water resources like desalinations, groundwater pumping, etc. And for desalination, for example, I would like to highlight some of the examples, like, for example, some countries like Arabi Saudi, they are developing a lot of technology for water desalinations, and this is helping to provide this fresh water available for drinking and using. And for the food water double ways, so then energy to food, how can water use food energy trade-offs? And for the food to energy, what ways for operation of dams could sustain the wanted fishing, etc. So here I will just highlight one of the examples on how energy could support the water availability, and just mention this desalination example. And here we're given some of the technology available for desalinations and the source of energy needed for that, and some examples of what kind of energy consumptions needed and the heat consumptions needed. And with this example of Tunisia, where we can see linkages between water, energy, and food. So for example, in Tunisia, the photovoltaic sectors have the potential to deliver 80% of total electricity consumptions of the agriculture and the agri-food sector. And it was estimated to be at 2,882 gigawatt hour in 2016. And this PV is used for water pumping, for irrigation activities. And there are several activities in the south and the rural area in Tunisia are showing this. And with this, I hand over to my colleague, Dr. Erica Key, to continue with the examples. ويسعدني الرد على أسئلتكم فيما يتعلق بهذا الجزء من المداخلة في نهاية اللقاء، وأيضا الرد على طلبكم بتقديم المداخلة القادمة باللغة العربية. شكرا.
Thank you so much.
Erica, I continue. Would you like to have the control of the screen, or I can help you with it?
If you don't mind leaving the slides up and helping me advance them, that would be great. I think we'd save some time.
Okay.
So thank you very much for the wonderful overview. I'm going to give two case studies today that are not just nexus approaches, but are transdisciplinary. So they really thread together knowledge from many different sciences. So not just hydrologic, physical, climate science, but also social science and the lived experience of the people in the region. And if you have been to the Museum of Water Civilization in Marrakesh, this is an excellent example of transdisciplinary approaches. So my first case study is in the Zab Valley in Algeria. And this is work that was, excuse me, that was completed by a multinational team called T2SG, and the website is at the bottom, but that stands for Transformation to Sustainable Groundwater. And this project was actually led by social scientists who recognized the historical knowledge of water management in the oases in Algeria. So this map in the bottom corner shows the different aquifers in Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia, and where the water is taken from this aquifer is in the red areas, and you can see where the most intensive draws or abstraction from the aquifer are. And this generally relates to agriculture. And in the past, agriculture worked with the water flows. And the map here shows where old villages were, where cities have built up, where dams have been in the past, and how the water is flowing. So they used the natural system of water and the recharge by flash floods that could happen as many as twice a year, sometimes not at all. So there is the potential for drought and the need to manage beyond a single season or year. And it used a secular circularity of water to address the date palm crops in the region, as well as modest animal husbandry. Now there are extension farms that tap deep into the aquifer and draw off significant amounts of water. And this was intended to help food security in the region and to decrease the reliance on imports. Next slide, please. Faten, can you help me advance the slide? I'm sorry. I think we missed one. There we go. Thank you.
Did you get it? Sorry.
Yes, it worked well. Thank you. Sorry. So in this example, the team met with a smaller scale farmer who was trying to integrate the new technologies of the extension agriculture with the secular circularity approaches that have been around for hundreds of years. And so he was deploying dikes at a wadi to withdraw some of the water from there to his farm, using old technologies of the recharge well. And you can see an old well here in the photo, now with new technology, now with water pumps, with hydraulics, because in the past it was animals that were used to bring the water up. So he developed this process to maximize the use of the water naturally, while recognizing in some drought years, there might be the need to use the deep tube well that goes into the deep aquifer. That has to be done on an emergency basis only, because that can deplete the deep aquifer and create opportunities for salinization and other intrusions into the water table, as Faten shared in the Tunisia case. So this is an example of trying to use historical knowledge and new technology, but even this approach, this combined approach, causes problems within the region because of the need for water governance and the feeling amongst other farmers in the region that any diversion from the wadi is creating problems for farms downstream. So there's a need to engage with social science to develop a water management plan that is fair. And in the past, this was developed based on the number of date palms a farm would have. That would determine the amount of water you are allowed to withdraw from the wadi. So considering now that agriculture has expanded and diversified, we need to revisit that water governance model. Next slide, please.
You get it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So just an example of some of their learning, they looked at the historical models, how the water was recharged in the system and used to have continuity of farming even during dry periods. And now the future perspective, integrating that knowledge together with new technology. How do we then manage water for today and the future? So it's really becoming a concern of governance. We have the technology, we have the understanding, we are able to project the climate. So very much in this oasis, it is moving into the social science regime of water sharing and the socio-hydro system. Next slide, please.
Did you get it?
That's wonderful. Thank you. Sorry to put you in this position. My last example for today is going to be more of a urban agricultural system and water usage in a water-stressed country like Qatar. And the idea here is looking at different technologies and approaches that can be deployed in an accessible way. So they have created an urban living lab at the university to allow experimentation and working together with the public and government to identify ways forward. Because if we look at the ground cover in Qatar, you know, a lot of it is just bare area. So the actual cropland being only 2% of their total area, despite being a small country. And their groundwater stocks are largely impacted by agriculture, pulling that out, despite a strong input from flash desalination to create water in the country and reuse of gray water. This is the TSE injection. This is treated sewage effluents that is reused in different ways. They are highly dependent on imports and have very few exports at this time. So for their long-term sustainability and resilience, there needs to be some merging of technology and knowledge to address the agricultural needs of the country. Next slide, please. So again, this is a transdisciplinary and a nexus approach that will go into more details. And this project was called the Movable Nexus. And so it's really threading together this idea of a business, government, science, and public partnership, recognizing the need for increased agriculture, but in a way that is sustainable and does not withdraw from the other water abstractions in the country, and uses a very complex model to look at the inner relationships of these different sectors to create a plan for the country. Next slide, please. So as Faten was showing in her model of how water has implications on many different systems, they did the same here. By their first step was understanding how water, food, and energy interact within Qatar. And this is looking at a number of different stakeholder groups that have an interest in water, that depend on water, that regulate it, who makes the laws, who does the treatment, who does the dissemination of water through the infrastructure. And so they mapped this out. And in some cases, here water are the blue elements in this network diagram. Energy is in purple, food is in yellow, And there are some other elements that that engage with this that are in orange. But if you see those those elements in the diagram that are, for example, purple and yellow, or blue and yellow, these are areas where there is shared activity. So this, for example, blue and yellow is where water and food come together, and this is a legislative space. So this is where government is becoming involved. Here we have a mixture of energy and food, and this is a location where, you know, this is an institution or an organization that is trying to provide access to both food and energy. So such a map can be very helpful when you're trying to understand the complexity of something as you know, critically important as water, or as how water interacts with food and who makes the decisions about these things. So they've worked with farmers, they've worked with city planners in Qatar at this urban living lab to develop this network map of who they should be talking to when engaging in this complex science. Next slide, please. And so in a living lab, it does more than stakeholder engagement. It does more than science. It really moves into the solution space. And because you're working together with decision makers, it's the ability to, you know, move from knowledge into action. And so the Living Lab in Doha has come up with a number of solution spaces that they are experimenting and making available to the public at Qatar University. So the urban water machine, the urban farm, you know, being able to experiment in production in ways that are accessible, and looking at further issues that arise from manipulating agriculture in a water-stressed area. So how does this relate to the soil quality and the biodiversity in the region? How do we get people involved, and how does this become a profitable business for more than just a few people? And what do we do with the waste if we are not relying on secular circularity and we're inputting fertilizers? What does that mean, and how do we ensure that this does not create imbalances elsewhere in the system? I think that's my last slide. Can we advance one more, Faten? There you go. I turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, I think we turn it back to Anjali. Ala.
Thank you so much, Dr. Faten and Dr. Erica. Thank you so much for doing it while you sound that you a bit sick. Feel better soon, inshallah. Thank you so much for that. And we can now move to Q&A. If anyone has any question, he can raise his hand or her hand, or send the question in the chat box. Okay, I will have a question until, yes, this is me. I will have a question until everybody else is raising their hands. Based on your experience, what do you think Egypt has in part of, speaking of opportunities in water desalination and water treatment, how do you see our opportunities in that? I know that Egypt has invested a lot of money in building a new desalination plants, and currently we are doing a big projects on water treatment as well. What do you think, what we will achieve out of this?
Faten, would you like to answer?
Yeah, maybe I take and then I give I hand back to you. Yeah, actually, what I see in Egypt and also what I see in the all North African countries is the abundant resource of solar and wind energies are amazing resources, and then they can have, you know, like more you know, like ways of using this. It's not only for energy, but also could help in really installing and implementing this Nexus approach, you know, and also for water desalination. So I think I see the huge opportunity there, because knowing the renewable energy resources in Egypt, solar and wind. So I believe that this could be huge opportunities, you know, for I think that there are some plans to install this desalination project, right, in Egypt. So I see a lot of opportunity there. Yeah. But just there is some point that we have been discussing, and maybe I would like to share a little bit on this, that the use of desalination should be also always used with some of the moderation, because this also would affect, you know, that the biodiversity, the food security. So there is also this kind of balance, like what to use for what use, and also how to moderate and have this kind of balance in order, you know, to achieve the sustainable transformation, and not just to abuse one of the resources while, you know, like damaging the other resource. So this is also very important to highlight.
Yeah, that was my second question. I was going to ask you how ecological to rely on desalination plants. Yeah, because, you know, I believe that some of them will be on the Red Sea, and maybe we'll have something on the Mediterranean too. So I was going to ask you about how ecological is to develop desalination projects on there. And we have a question from Dr. Ala.
Okay, thanks, Erica and Faten, for your presentation. My question, do you study how much water for crop under climate change you need? And if yes, you study, what is the best method for, from your opinion, to increase water use efficiency for this crop under climate change?
Faten, would you like me to start? And then, so thank you very much for the question, Dr. Ala. I think the key here, we've seen many approaches to water management in the region. If I look at the example in Qatar, the technology came before the management plan. And so I think the issue is that there are increasing opportunities to recharge the aquifers, for example, with the flash desalination. But because the technology was implemented before the management plan, it came so that people thought water was everywhere and could be used, you know, without limit. And so people were using it to wash their cars twice a day instead of using it for agriculture or other needs. So I think it's important to have, you know, a joint plan and a future plan that looks at the projections and recognizes that with climate change, the available natural water will vary in ways that are not familiar from the past. So there's going to be a need to conserve and explore different types of agricultural practices. But, you know, with these technologies actually come other benefits. And we had a project in Somalia that's still going on that was doing desalination, but also reaping minerals from the seawater that they were using for other purposes. So they were able to look at this from a multidisciplinary way. And I think that is the important point of climate change, is bringing together all of these knowledges to make the most of what we can do.
Yeah, thank you very much, Erica. Maybe, yeah, you covered most of the points that I had in mind to share. But just I want to, sorry. Yeah, just I wanted to highlight that according to the different scenarios that have been discussed for the implication of climate change on the water resources, so this would be dramatically affecting the surface water and also the groundwater in both regions, in both regions of North Africa and Middle East. So here, if no actions, yeah, I also know that moving with actions is very challenging because it needs a lot of planning and also some of the management planning and management processes, as Dr. Erica was mentioning. But it is also very important that to couple this use of technology or smart ways to use the technology in order to save water, and also on how to plan this in a sustainable way in order, you know, to make it that we are, like making this technology and use of the water conservation and also management, and also try to use, as we are presenting about the Nexus approach, like how could energy help and support the water availability and the water conservation. So yeah.
We have a question from Dr. Anjuli.
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And my question is, given the institutional complexity, like you have a Ministry of Energy, and you might have a Ministry of Food, and a Ministry of Agriculture, etc., how do you see those institutional barriers to, if you want to apply this approach, especially for the larger countries, where in a smaller country like Qatar, maybe there's much more lateral communication, but otherwise, how do you see the stovepipes kind of being broken down to examine these issues that you have described?
I'm happy to take that one if you don't
Okay.
mind. But so it is a case-by-case basis. For example, in the Americas, in Latin America and the Caribbean, ministers generally don't talk to each other. For example, there are ministers of environment and there are ministers of climate change, and they don't meet because of the structure. So this is a place where the WHO has been successful in that region, connecting them through health and recognizing that before, say, the last 5 years, the Minister of Health was only interested in hospitals and pharmaceuticals, not really thinking of health in the context of climate change, in the context of water stress. So at least in that region, health has been the bind that brings them together. And the WHO has been able to engage ministers in understanding transdisciplinary approaches. So that has been quite a step forward recently. Within the MENA region in Jordan, for example, the Minister of Water there was engaged in a transdisciplinary project. And when you're approaching a minister, I think you need to consider what is their involvement, what is their interest, and what drives them. And in that case, a minister wants to stay in office. So they want to be reelected or reappointed. And so it was very powerful for this minister to work with a multinational team to develop a water distribution plan for Jordan, because for him to say to the people, oh, I saved so much, $6 million or something like that, it's a bit abstract. But to say, I gave you consistent access to clean water is extremely powerful, and secures a re-election. So I think it's important to understand the government structures, how they talk with one another, who makes the decisions, and what type of information they require, and then understand there needs to be a mutual benefit there. So it's for many scientists, physical scientists, it seems very far away, but there are a lot of scientists that this is what they do. They work on governance structures, and that's why a transdisciplinary approach that brings together the experts in hydrology and physical science and all of this, together with social scientists, can have this kind of influence at a national level.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. Maybe I would like to add a little bit on this. My experience with transdisciplinarity and approaching this kind of issues is that currently there is really a lack of awareness on how to use this transdisciplinarity approach to make to find solution for big issues. And according to one of the discussions we had that was for the Suchi final event, I remember that we had a big discussion on what could we do in order to improve this cross-sector collaboration. And one of the feedback that we got from the participant, for example, that there is no policy that consider the cross-sector collaboration, like each sector is working by its own, so then we can find the separate results. But like each result could have implication on the other sector, and this is very important. And also the second point, like while talking about climate change, I have the feeling that the understanding of the risks of climate change and what is climate change is not the same in the different contexts, like, and where you have a little awareness about it, or people who do not really understand the implication, or when they come to this point as a very new point, so then, it needs some time to go into practices. And I think this is very important, approaching this with approaching the awareness about the fact, because it's very important to understand the fact, and then also try to get the solutions in order to have this cross-sector collaborations and make the different stakeholder and key elements working together in order really to get and to find solutions for example, the issue of water in our case we are talking about.
Thank you so much, Faten, and thank you so much, Dr. Erica. Anyone has any more question or otherwise? We hope to see. Oh, we do.
What is their presence?
What? Yes. Are you gonna attend COP27? What's your plan for it?
I hope to. I'm waiting to hear if we have an exhibit or we have a special event that was proposed on fire. So I hope to be able to visit Sharm el-Sheikh for the COP. Faten, do you have plans?
I hope so. For the moment, I'm still waiting for a few confirmation. Maybe I can confirm next month.
So Erica and Faten, if you inform the Climate Change Information Center staff about your plans as they finalize, it is possible that you could also do a side meeting with them. I believe that we can have much more cooperation when we meet face to face. So I won't be here, but I do hope that if you keep us informed, then we can try to, Dr. Ala can facilitate some meeting between you and the relevant folks at Climate Change Information Center and other agencies also, possibly.
Yes, please just let us know and we can help with that, inshallah. Dr. Ala, you have a plan?
It would be wonderful.
Yes, of course. Welcome anytime in Egypt. We hope to see you, all of you, Erica and Faten here in Egypt. I have last question. If Ala, please give me. Okay, my question about the water harvesting. Do you think is one solution of to face climate change impact on water resources is to make water harvesting from the rain?
Faten, do you want to lead?
Water harvesting.
Yeah, just if I got the question, you're asking about water harvesting fight to meet the risks of climate change. This is the question, Ala, right?
Yes, he was asking if we can use water harvesting to solve climate change amongst other solutions.
Yeah, here just let me say something about rain in the future. Because of climate change, the risk of climate change, the precipitation will be very lower and decrease compared to what we have now. But also there is some of the ways that we can use for water harvesting, and some of the, like tanks that was an example. So in Lebanon, they are putting some of the tanks, the roof of the buildings in order to harvest water from there. There are some of the technologies or some of the solutions that we can find there. But just keep in mind that this is very important, but also for the precipitation will be reduced, and also for the season will be kind of changed. So this could be one of the solutions. Yeah, but I mean, not large scale solution. I don't know, Erica, if you agree with me.
Yes, I think everything helps, right? But
Yeah.
you know, the past climate patterns recharged these aquifers and these oases. But if those climate patterns shift and either there's less rain or there's rain in other areas, you know, it may be difficult to come up with a water harvesting strategy that works. But for urban areas, I think it can help because you're working with non-porous surfaces, you know, in terms of roadways and all of that. So capturing the water before it has a chance to become gray water is a good idea.
Thank you so much again, Dr. Erica, and thank you, Faten. I think we still have 4 more minutes if anyone has any more questions.
We will see them again next week.
Yes, we will see you again next week. This is a good point, Dr. Anjali. Okay, thank you so much again and feel better, Dr. Erica, and see you next week, inshallah. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye. إلى اللقاء الأسبوع القادم. Bye.